You ready for the rebirth? You laughing, I'm laughing.
Alright, so these blogs have really helped me out because it's helped me to remember a lot of things that come up in conversation amongst comedians within the comedy community. And one thing I think is that I believe we miss it a lot of times when we think about comedy as just for laughs. I mean, don't get me wrong, comedy is supposed to be funny. Whether you're doing it in a church, whether you're doing it in a theater, whether you're doing it in a comedy club, it's supposed to be funny. I think as comedians, we miss that our comedy is a gift, a tool, particularly if you are trying to operate within the body of Christ, within the church. And sometimes we miss it because we don't properly understand the purpose of the church. I get a lot of times comedians will tell me, comedians who operate in church and comedians who don't do events at church or who want to, they'll say, hey man, I can do some of them church shows, man. Let me get some of that church work. And it's not about getting church work. If it's just about me getting laughs and me getting a check, then you're not going to properly understand how the system works, and you won't be effective in the system, nor will you be able to properly operate within that system. Let me give you an example of what I'm saying. As a comedian back in the 90s, when I was doing comedy clubs, I always understood my role in the comedy club system. And once I learned that, it helped me to be effective operating within that system. The number one goal of comedy clubs is not comedy. The purpose of comedy clubs is to sell people drinks. Oh, I don't mean that to criticize comedy clubs, but that's their purpose. A comedy club's purpose is to sell drinks. As a comedian, I recognized that my job was to stay on stage for 45 minutes to an hour while the club sold the people as many drinks as they possibly could. My job is to hold them in the seats laughing while the club sells them as many drinks as they possibly could, no less, or a minimum of 2. That's where the 2-drink minimum comes in. So the comedy is a tool, an inexpensive tool, relatively, because people are not going to come in and pay a cover charge and sit down in an establishment to buy drinks and just look at each other. Now you might say, well, it's about food. What about the food? No, it's not about the food, because if it was about the food, it'd be called comedy restaurant. The food can barely get to 100, maybe 200% markup. On a drink, you can get 300-400% markup, and depending on where you are, how much you charge for your drinks, you can get 1,000% markup. So it's not about the comedy. Again, I'm not saying that to criticize or any way demean or beat down comedy clubs. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just telling you the truth. My point is, if you don't understand the purpose of the system, the initiatives and goals of the system, you'll disrespect that system. And that's why some comedians aren't effective in comedy clubs, because they think it's about them. They think the show is about them. No, the show is about you holding them the entire show so they can sell drinks. So what is the purpose of the church? To save souls, to love, to restore, to encourage, to teach, to expand, to help, to build up. And if we as comedians walk in with a "it's about me" attitude, or "it's about me getting laughs," or "me getting our checks," we're not going to be effective operating in the church. We're going to wind up disrespecting the church. No, our attitude has to be, my job is to come in and distribute healing laughter, encouragement, restoration, fun, good quality entertainment with no conviction. So for a comedian to walk into a church and say, why it's always got to be about ministry? I don't understand. How come every time I go to a church, it's always got to be about ministry? Well, that's its job, to minister. We're just a tool to be utilized for the purposes of ministry. That's like me walking on stage in a comedy club and saying, How come every time I come up in here, everybody's selling liquor? Why y'all drinking liquor? Why they got this liquor on the wall? Why they got these waitresses? Man, it's always liquor signs. That's his job. It's a comedy club. That's what they do.
Get ready for the